We are here. It is Friday night, my friend. It is the day after. Gobble, 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 gobble. Did you have a lot of good turkey there at the Ritster?
Oh man, turkey. We got the stuffing,
Did you just say turkey?
turkey.
Kind of sound like you said the turkey.
Yeah,
Yeah,
got the turkey, the little stuffing. You
yeah.
got the scoop ski potatoes.
Are those the little thin ones that the scallops?
No.
What do
Scoop
you mean
ski
the
potato.
scoop ski? What are you talking
Scoop.
about that?
Okay, if you're into practical jokers, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, are you talking about mashed potatoes?
Yeah. Little scoop ski
Yes,
potatoes.
mashed potatoes.
You know,
So what's your
and what?
continue?
And then you got the pie.
What kind of pie you like?
Well,
Because this
can
is a
we?
wrestling podcast, I'm quite sure I know how you're going to answer that. But
Well,
what kind of edible pie do you like?
I like me a little lemon meringue.
Lemon meringue is good. I feel like lemon meringue is undervalued in the pie
Yes,
world.
yes. And then I got me the pumpkin pie.
You like the pumpkin. You like? Did you do any pecan?
No pecans.
You don't do the pecan?
No.
See, I feel like the pecan is a jobber pie. I
For,
feel
for,
like the pecan pie is just like,
th-
okay, I gotta.
you look more like an apple pie guy.
Oh, I'm an apple pie
Like a
guy.
like a warm apple pie,
Yes, I am a warm apple pie.
like an American pie.
We like the song.
No, like the movie.
Bye bye, Miss American Pie. Who sings that? Is that Don?
Don Henley.
No, it is not Don Henley. Shut up. It is not Don Henley. Like is that like Don McLean? I want to
Yeah.
say
Who's
Don
Don
Henley.
Henley?
Shut
Who's Don
up.
Henley, anyways?
Shut up. Next thing you're gonna be like, nah, I think that's Huey Lewis. All right, let's
No.
get on with it. No one wants to hear us talk. They
It's
want to
just
talk. They want to hear about the stars, not us.
well. We got a great star. He's been in the business, been in the indies for many years, but he's still the future of this business because, well, you can't be in the business for as long as he have and not have knowledge to pass on to the next generation.
I agree.
And well, let's bring him in, Mr. Matt Turner.
What's up, gentlemen? Happy holidays. How's everybody doing?
We are good. We are doing very well. Hopefully, you had a very nice holiday as well.
Absolutely. It's always nice to be around family. And by the way, Don Henley is the guy from the Boys of Summer, and he was in the Eagles. So
See,
throwing that out there.
Wow. Okay, I just got burned real quick.
Don Henley. Good grief.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. None of us are perfect.
So, man, wrestling is something that we talk about all the time, and you would think that we've talked about everything there is to talk about wrestling. But what I love about what we do is we get to talk to new people each and every week, and we get to hear what their journey is, what their story is, and what got them to where they are right now. What are their aspirations, and where do they see themselves? So, let me kind of take you through this here, Matt. Where did it all start? How did it all start? How did you originally fall in love with this thing that we are all obsessed with, that is pro wrestling?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and my earliest memory was watching a tape of WrestleMania 3, maybe only a
Nice.
week or two. Well, maybe only a week or two after it happened. I remember every Sunday we would have family dinner over my grandparents' house, and one of my uncle's friends had the tape from WrestleMania 3. Again, maybe about a week after it happened. And I remember I was watching a couple matches waiting for Hulk and Andre, and the guy who had the tape, his wife came in the room and said, "Only one more match, and then we have to go." And he looked at me and he said, "Well, I know you wanted to watch this. Did you want to watch Hulk and Andre, or you want to watch the match that everyone's talking about, Ricky Steamboat and Randy Savage?" And I was like, now I grew up the biggest Hulkamaniac. I'm like, no, I want to watch Hulk and Andre. And then fast forward a handful of years later, you realize that obviously Savage and Steamboat was the match that stole the show. But obviously I liked wrestling before that, if I knew who Hulk and Andre was. But that was my earliest memory.
Wow. So, what would you say that kind of drew you in about it? I mean, big Hulkamaniac, but was it something specific about it, or was it just this larger than life humanistic superheroes?
Well, I think I always wanted to take it like to the next level. Like I would always watch it Saturdays and Sundays, and then even Mondays before it was Monday Night Raw, it was primetime wrestling.
Yep.
I kind of had to deal with my parents. I had like a strict bedtime and whatnot. But if I had really good grades and did all my chores, I could stay up late on Mondays to watch primetime wrestling, and then became Monday Night Raw. I grew up about 10 minutes outside Scranton, And once every 2 months, they would run the CYC in Scranton, which is actually Gorilla Monsoon's favorite all-time building and award shows in. And my dad would always take me like once every 2 months. So it's like I loved watching it and then watching it live. And then I would realize, well, now I need to take it another step further. And then I eventually wanted to. I grew up, I was kind of small, and I was like, well, maybe I could be a manager. And then, the late 90s, those smaller guys were getting over your Shawn Michaels, your Bret Harts, your Rey Mysterios, Eddie Guerreros, Chris Jericho's, yada, yada, yada. So I thought, well, maybe I can do this. And then when I was 17 years old, junior in high school, my accounting teacher, who is a friend of mine and a family friend of mine, was also the lifting coach. And I got hooked on weightlifting, and pretty much 20 some odd years later, I've pretty much never stopped going to the gym and never stopped working out and staying in shape and just being obsessed with just pro wrestling. So obviously that's the cosmetic part is a big part of that. But I realized I started putting on size, and I realized, let me give this a shot and let me try to do this.
Were there any other sports or anything you played growing up, maybe in high school, middle school, that type of thing? Were you always kind of athletically inclined?
Yeah, I wasn't a good athlete by any means, but I did play baseball all the way up until I got into high school, football all the way up until high school. I wasn't really good at it, but I was really good at taking a beating. For example, in Little League, I set the county record for most hits by a pitch in a season, and
Oh,
a lot of it was, hey, lean into it. Hey, the coach would tell me to lean into it to take one for the team to get on base. And the same thing when I was playing football. Again, I grew up. I was in high school, I think when I graduated high school, I was about 110, maybe 115 pounds, soaking
mhm.
wet, holding the brick. But I remember we would be playing football teams, and the coach would be like, well, I would be on defense as a safety or cornerback, and they would have me, back then in the 90s, it wasn't all this passing, it was a lot of running. So they would have me purposely run into the fullback, so this way he didn't have a blocker. So I would constantly get hit and get knocked
Oh.
on my ass. So then this way it would take away the blocker. So it kind of made sense. Well, geez, he's really good at getting his ass kicked. Why not take some bunts? And I guess I didn't know back then. I was kind of preparing myself for kind of a career of an independent wrestler, because that's what we do. We kind of take our lumps and take our bunts and get our asses kicked.
You were taking bumps your whole life before you even stepped into wrestling.
Yeah, right. What else could I be, right?
Oh my gosh. So you decide, obviously, that there's this love of wrestling and it's never really gone away. And it's interesting because, your parents and family, whenever they hear you want to get involved in wrestling, it's always like, okay, I'm sure you do. But then for the people that we talk to, it never really goes away. It's always there. Was this something that you went to college, or did you decide, you know what, I'm going to go straight into it after high school?
No, I did both. I did both. I just basically just did college to appease my parents, because they're like, well, what if this doesn't work out, or if you need a second income, and and as usual, my dad 99.999% of the time is right. He's really never gave me bad advice. I'm very lucky that I've had fantastic parents, so I was able to do both. I went to one wrestling. I actually graduated from two wrestling schools. I went to before CM Punk and Ring of Honor, which I'm sure we'll get there. I actually went to Backbreakers Wrestling School, which was only maybe about 10 minutes away from my house. So, but
Oh,
even
wow.
before that, even before that, I'm getting ahead of myself. Of course, everybody before they start pro wrestling, everybody in the 90s, even now, they do the backyard stuff. So, again, I was taking bumps on the ground before I even got into a pro wrestling ring.
Wow. So when you finally decide, pro wrestling is something obviously I'm going to seek out, did you really have any idea of even where to even start looking, or was it something that you talked to somebody about, or how did that kind of that beginning part of it kind of start up?
I don't. I remember going to an independent wrestling show. I saw flyers up. There's an independent wrestling show in the Firehouse in Music. I grew up, like I said, right outside Scranton, small town called Old Forge, and I decided to go to the show. And I realized, I'm in better shape than these guys. I kind of understand, a little bit of the business or how to build a match, or at least I thought back then, better than these guys. And then they said they were opening up a school in the same building. So I figured, well, geez, this is perfect. This is literally 5-10 minutes away from my house. I can do a wrestling school and go to college and do my regular job. So this way it appeases everybody. So I was kind of lucky that was literally, 5 minutes away from my house.
Wow. So when you first get into training with your first wrestling school, Was it kind of a surprise to you as far as what they were looking for, as far as the conditioning, as far as physically what was going to be happening? Or were you like, you know what, I've already been involved in athletics for my entire life. I'm already used to the bumps, the bruises, really hard hitting stuff. I think I can handle this pretty well.
The cardio is completely different. I mean, again,
Mhm.
I've done athletics my whole life, and you can run on the treadmill all you want. You can, do all the box jumps you want. You can run around the football stadium all you want. Suicides all you want. The wrestling is completely different. The best way to get in shape for wrestling is to constantly do it. To either be at training or in a match, because your heart rate goes up, down, up, down. It all depends on the spots. You may be doing chain wrestling, we can breathe a little. Then you may do a high spot. You may do something outside. You may run a whole couple other spots. Then if you're in a tag team or a six-man, that could be something else. You're tagging in and out, getting your heart rate up, heart rate back down, getting your wind up, your wind down. Sometimes you have to slow things up, speed things up. Sometimes you don't know where the crowd is. And that's just the magic, because you really don't know what's going to happen. Even though if you may plan something out A to Z, you may switch something. So that was the biggest thing that took the surprise for me. It was just how insane the cardio and conditioning was.
Who were some of the people that when you first started training, did you start to develop some relationships with these people? Is there anybody that you still stay in contact with, or that you kind of came across paths again down the road?
Oh yeah, obviously one of my best friends in the business is Brad DeMeo. I mean, I've known him since we were in the backyard. He broke in maybe about a year before or two before I did, and then him and his tag team partner at the time, Joey Davino, they were the Hardcore Mafia. We would do a lot of the early road trips together. And then another buddy of mine that helped teach me a lot of things along the way is Draven Blaze, who I still talk to. I think I just talked to him maybe about a week or so ago. So I try to keep in. I don't burn any bridges. I'm the easiest going guy. I try to, keep in contact with as many people as I possibly can.
Yeah, I actually know Draven. Him and I go way back for like 2012. He's a great guy, and pretty
Good dude.
straightforward.
Good, yeah, great dude. Always sings, high praises of me. As you know, he just moved down to Florida a handful of months ago. So, hey, he seems like he's doing really well down there. And I keep telling him, hey man, it's getting cold up over here in Pennsylvania. Get me booked down there, let's give me a plane flight, get me booked down there, get out of the cold weather for a little bit. So fingers crossed, and see what happens.
So obviously, when you get done with that, what's your thoughts at that point? I mean, I've trained to be a wrestler. I've been a fan of it my entire life. Are you thinking, at what point, maybe I should rephrase this, that you started to feel really comfortable? And I know a lot of wrestlers, even when we talk to Jerry Lynn, he even says, I never ever really quite felt comfortable. And I feel like a common thread between wrestlers is A, they're all always hard on themselves. B, they may or may not ever watch their matches back. It's either they do or they don't. It's never kind of in between. Did you ever feel like you were really kind of getting into your groove? And if so, when did that really start to happen after you were starting to train?
Yeah, I think Jerry hits it right on the head. You're comfortable, you're confident, but not 100% comfortable, because again, you don't know what's going to happen out there. I remember when my first real kind of big indie matches a handful of years ago, I wrestled, maybe about 15, 20 years ago, I wrestled Christopher Daniels, and he was telling me, he's like, there's three things that happens you could have a good match. One, nobody gets hurt. Two, the promoter liked it, and three, the fans liked it, in that order. So if you can accomplish those three things, then that's how you've known you've had a good match. And that makes sense. You always want to make sure you're taking care of yourself and take care of opponents. And my style is as you guys know, it's very hard hitting. It's very, all Japan style. Obviously, I was trained in the Ring of Honor dojo. I spent some time at the New Japan dojo. So I like to have my wrestling to have very little holes in it. But I also want to make sure I'm taking care of my opponents and they're taking care of me as well. And again, you also, want to make sure that the boss is happy. And you have two bosses out there, one, the promoter, and two, the fans. So yeah, to kind of, tie in your question there, you're always confident. There's sometimes like, when I'm in gorilla position and I'm super nervous, but maybe the past 2 or 3 years, I've been nervous, but I've been super comfortable because I'm super confident in what I can do. I know that if something doesn't work out, I can kind of maybe slow it down and kind of just redirect to see what the fans are thinking. But you're never 100% confident. And that's the beauty of it. That's part of the magic. That's pro wrestling.
You had mentioned Christopher Daniels, and obviously you've been around a long time. You've seen a ton of things, your experiences. is a wealth of knowledge. Early on, do you remember any conversations you had with people, or maybe anybody in particular, that really kind of took a liking to you and pulled you aside and said some words of encouragement or words of wisdom early on to you to say, hey, you know what? I like what you're doing. Keep what you're doing. Try this, try that. Was there any of those, kind of, I don't want to call them hallmark moments, but a moment when somebody actually went ahead and took time to talk to you about how you were
There's,
doing?
it's funny you say that because there's actually a couple, but how I came across my first furniture I ever used was the Fujiwara armbar. I was taught to me in the Ring of Honor dojo by Samoa Joe, but I just wasn't sure how to transition into it. So I was working a match. I forget who was. I know Petey Williams was in the match because Alex Shelley was doing commentary. And this is IWA Mid South. The match got over with, and Alex Shelley came over to me and he said, and it's funny because I was just on a show with Alex Shelley maybe less than a month ago, and we were talking about it. We were laughing. So he said he liked the way how I do the Fujiwara armbar, but if I can do it, a single arm DDT, hold on to the wrist and float over into the Fujiwara armbar, and I still use it from time to time today. So that always helped. Jim Cornette, it was when I had my first Ring of Honor match. We cut the curtain. He was the first person there. It was the Midnight Express reunion. So it was Cornette, Eaton, Lane, and Condrey. It was literally as soon as we cut there, they all shook my hand, and Cornette said, goddamn kid, he's like, if your offense is as good as your defense, you're going to do really well in this business. And what he meant was because we just went out there in a tag match and just got me and Shane Hagedorn got squashed by the Carnage Crew. So it's like, well, if I'm just going to get squashed, I'm going to be the best seller out there. So what he meant was eventually when I get some offense, if it can look as good as Mike selling or getting my ass kicked, that I think I'm going to do pretty well in this business. So those were always encouragement. CM Punk was always great. Even when he left and he went to OVW and WWF or WWE. I kept in contact with him from time to time. I have nothing but great things to say about him. I'm very lucky. After he left, I remember we would do Ring of Honor dark matches, and we'd cut the curtain, and Matt Sydal and Roderick Strong, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, who's all Cesaro. They would always take the time to sit down with you and pick apart your matches and give you, and not browbeat you, not tell you, well, this sucked, quit the business, kid, burn your boots. But they would never say anything like that. They were always just super positive. So I'm very lucky that I've had a lot of really, really good people from the past, present, and future, give me some encouragement and give me some advice that to this day I teach to the young kids coming up, the young guys and gals coming up, and hopefully whatever I say works.
It's so interesting that we talk about that because there's some people we've talked to some really difficult times in the beginning, but I think the majority of people, much like yourself, have always said, I was really lucky. I had a lot of people who genuinely cared about my progress, and they would talk to me, and they realized how passionate I was about that. And I think that's something that people pick up pretty quickly about someone, especially in this industry. If you're serious, if you're genuinely in it because you want to be in it and not just, hey, look at me, I got this great body and I'm going to be a flash in the pan. But when you see stuff like that, people can generally find the good ones. And I think that's so awesome that these people saw something in you so early on and they gave you so many things to think about. I'm sure those conversations were just mind-blowing because you have so many people in here around you who have done so many great things, and now you're able to absorb that.
It blows my mind. You look back on it, and I talk to Shane Hagedorn all the time. He's a producer for AEW. God bless him. He's doing well. But it's just like, you just look at like what we had in front of us and we never realized it. Like, you're literally training 2 to 3 times a week with CM Punk. And whenever they would do shows on the East Coast, Samoa Joe would stay over Punk's house, and then he would train with us as well. So it's like you had Punk, Joe, and then once Punk got signed, Bryan Danielson comes in. And it's just like you have that. And then when he came in, he was feuding with Kenta. And we did a seminar with Bryan Danielson and Kenta. It's just like, and then Austin Aries was there. And then again, you have a locker room of, Homicide. Again, you had Hero, Cesaro, Roderick Strong. I mean, it goes, Matt Sydal, the list goes on and on. You have Marufuji, there's shows that Kenta Kobashi's there, Misawa's there. It's just like that was just like a normal day for us. You look back on it now, 15, 16, 17 years later, like, holy geez, like Punk's coming back, is the biggest thing in wrestling in the last 5 years. And, now all of a sudden it's like, I talk to people all the time that it's like, oh yeah, Daniel Bryan's my favorite wrestler, and I'm like, oh, what's your favorite Ring of Honor match of his? And people are like, I've never seen him in Ring of Honor. I'm like, then you've never really seen the true, Daniel Bryan, Bryan Danielson. And now it's like they
Yes.
see him in AEW, and it's like, and don't get me wrong, his stuff in WWE is great, but that's only him at like 80%, which is still better than 99% of the workers out there. And now you're getting to see the true American Dragon, like the matches that he's having, just like, that guy's back there, and it's all guys that were so approachable. I mean, nobody. I'd never been in a locker room before where even, like I said, the legends, like, I was on a show with Dusty Rhodes. I had to follow Dusty Rhodes after a match, and he was the coolest guy, like just the coolest guy. Like I remember, I'm maybe getting off track, but I'll tell the story because it's an interesting story. We're sitting there, it's a tag match with all the Ring of Honor students. I started a year and a half before those guys did because I went to another training school, but we're basically guys having our 15th, 16th, 17th match, and we're in Gorilla, like calling the match back, and Dusty Rhodes is out there, and you just hear the crowd going crazy. Dusty comes back covered in blood, and he goes, I'm not going to do my Dusty Rhodes impersonation because it's terrible, but he goes, all right, what match is next? And I raised my hand. I said, our match is next. And he goes, baby, the dream just set this table. He goes, make sure you take them out for dinner. I was like, how are we going to follow that? Yeah.
Wow.
I think we were like I think we were supposed to go 8-9 minutes. We were like 5 minutes in and nobody cared. And I was like, let's just take it home. Let's just get out of
Wow. I mean, when you think about that, once again, not to get off topic here, but since we're talking about Ring of Honor and everything that's happened with Ring of Honor recently and how painful that is. I mean, obviously you being there, being a part of just the instrumental years of Ring of Honor and being right there during the heart of it, which I think any wrestler would have just died to be a part of it at that time. How did you feel when you heard that Ring of Honor was going to temporarily cease operations and kind of restructure the company?
Yeah, see, well, everybody kind of freaked out. And at first I was like, well, okay, they haven't run many shows in the last year and a half because of COVID, and they're kind of all in the bubble anyway. So it's like, okay, well, they're going to run Final Battle, which is their big, Super Bowl WrestleMania show. And then they're going to take 4 months off, and they're going to redo their thing starting Supercard of Honor, which they'll probably do WrestleMania weekend. That's where all the big shows. So to my thing, it was just like, okay, that's what they're doing. And then everybody starts texting me and DMing me and whatever, and like, oh, Ring of Honor's dead. Ring of Honor's dead. And I was like, well, no, they're just taking 4 months off to kind of, re-intervene. And then you find out they're releasing everybody from their contracts. And then I think from what they're going to do is they're going to basically run Ring of Honor like a super indie, kind of like how they did when they first started, kind of like how PWG's been doing for the last, 15, 16 years or what have you. So, God bless them. I got a good buddy of mine down there, Tony Deppen, who's been absolutely crushing it. They won their TV title. I watched him, come through the ladder of the indies. He worked all the smaller indies as I did. And I'm so proud of him, so happy for him. He's just gone by everybody I know. I'm like, that guy can go anywhere and do anything. So like my heart went out to him, especially because like I said, I've seen him, come along, a long way pretty fast. But he's a guy that I know stay on his feet, and he'll get on his feet, and I think everybody else will. So I think everybody just has to stay tuned to see what's going to happen. I don't think Ring of Honor. I think they're still going to be around, but it's just going to be a different Ring of Honor. But it's been a different Ring of Honor for the past 10 years or so. So it's just like everything in life and everything in this business just evolves. So I hope they keep going for obvious reasons. It's just. I'm part of the first ever graduating class from Ring of Honor. Regardless of what happens, nobody can never take that away from me, and I'm very proud and honored, pun intended, to I'm actually the last one of the first class that's actually still actively out there, still doing it.
Wow, that is crazy.
The only thing that I can't picture anywhere is the Briscoes wrestling anywhere else, because they lived and died with ROH.
They were the first official match with Jay and Amazing Red, or was it Jay and Spanky? I'm getting that confused now. But yeah, they've been there since day one. Mark wasn't old enough to wrestle in Pennsylvania when they first started in 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much history there. It's crazy. So obviously we look at your career, and you talked about your time in IWA Mid-South. You also spent some time in groundbreaking wrestling. What was groundbreaking wrestling? What was that like? Because I don't hear a whole lot about that. I mean, I know obviously it was a while ago, but any experiences there?
I wrestled. I wrestled there a couple times, not much. I had a few matches there. I wrestled a guy who passed on since JT Roberts. Good guy, great dude, great wrestler. He actually had a brilliant idea. I think we were wrestling for their like almost like their secondary championship, like their intercontinental championship. I forget what it's called, but he wanted to do something. I was obviously came in there to put him over, but he wanted to make me look good as well. So we did a finish that I've never. It was his idea. I've never seen of, and it was actually brilliant. Where I put him in a crossface, and I had him like in a crossface choke, and the referee would drop his hand 3 times. And on the third one, his hand would go down, but it would hit the rope. So I thought he was passed out, but it breaks, as you know, you hit the rope, it breaks the thing, and I was like, that's brilliant. Yeah. So
That's
then me and the ref,
smart.
I think I was like, that was brilliant. So that was his idea. And then I remember like me and the ref were playing tug of war with the title because I thought I won. And then I turned around and he hit me with his finish, which I think was the super kick. But yeah, I wrestled there a couple of times. Good atmosphere, good locker room. Like I said, my favorite match there was against Justin, who he passed away maybe about 9 or 10 years ago. So nothing but really good things to say about him.
Now, obviously, you've had an extensive amount of time you spent in IWA Mid South. What was your experiences like down there? Because I know obviously it's a little bit different of a style. What was it like working down there? Ritt and I have talked about this before. Ritt, you had some people that have come through your promotion who worked down in IWA Mid South. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually took out 2011 IWA Queen of the Deathmatch champion Rebecca Payne. Drove her out there and stuff, and just being able to sit, and had no idea who I was, but he sat there and talked to me and gave me advice and said, hey, you can ask anybody anything you want. And, I thought he's a great dude, and, took time when he didn't have to.
What was your take on IWA Mid South? I mean, there was a lot of different things that you did. You're part of a 3-way dance, which I thought was a great match. So, what was your takeaway from there?
IWA Mid South was great. Just the only thing is, none of the fans really understood how great they had it there. I remember our first day there, we did a 4-shot, and you're in a locker room. I think it was like a Wednesday. Yeah, it was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're in a locker room. And it's like, okay, you have the Ring of Honor students. You have Christopher Daniels, AJ Styles, Roderick Strong, P.D. Williams, CM Punk, Super Dragon, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli, Cesaro, and there's 20 people out in the crowd. And you're like, well, we know who's not getting paid for this show. They're not going to stiff AJ Styles, who I think was the NWA World Champion at the time. And it was just, would go to these shows and just these loaded locker rooms, and there was like nobody there up until you get to like Highland, Indiana, and then they would pack that place to 100, 150 or whatever. But you go to some of these shows in the middle of nowhere, just like, wow, this is an awesome card to be on, and this is going to look really good on tape with Smart Mark Video. Shout out to those guys. Those guys are awesome when they release it, because you're going to be on this card with all these people. But at the same time, it's like, now there's 30 people in the crowd. Again, you have CM Punk, AJ Styles, Christopher Daniels, Roderick Strong. So, but it was again all good experience, because again, you're in the locker room with literally the best of the best of the best, and look what all those guys, are still doing or in what they become. So IWA Mid South was a fun place to work, a fun place to wrestle, and a fun place to learn, which is what it's all about.
Let me kind of piggyback on that one there. So we've talked to different people, and some have said it's difficult. Some have said, you know what, after a certain amount of time, you just get into a rhythm. Is it difficult to get that energy level, to get that excitement going when there's only 20 or 30 people in there? Or is it just a mentality that you're trained with, that you know what, it's go time, no matter if there's 5 people in there, we're going to go at it. We're going to do everything we would do if there was 100,000 people here.
It's very easy to say, well, there's only 20 people out there, and the show I worked last week had 200. It's very easy to say, well, we kind of just take it easy. We're kind of do this, we're kind of do that. My mentality is, if I'm coming back, if I'm going to come back to this promotion the next month, and there's 20 people, I want all those 20 people to go home to tell 2 or 3 of their friends saying, oh man, you had to see what Matt Turner did. You had to see what this guy did. There was only 20 of us in the crowd, but he did this, he did that, and he put his time in. So if those 20 people go out there and tell 2 or 3 people, and then say there's 40 or 50 next time, and then I go out there even harder, and there's 100 and 125, so that's almost a point of pride with me, where it's just like, no, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to give those people, regardless whether they're 20 people or 200, they all paid their 10, 15, 20, $25, and they're trying to kind of escape. Wrestling, movies, music, it's all an escape from real life, because life can be difficult, life can be hard, life can kick our ass. So it's like, I'm not going to go out there and cheat those people out of their hard money if they paid to see me, and if I'm going to be out there. Not only that, but it is a point of pride for me, where it's like, I need to know that when I cut that curtain, that I busted my ass out there, that I had an awesome match. And it's to a point where it's just like, you don't know who's going to see that match. You don't know even now. You don't know if a Cody Rhodes, if a Nick Jackson, you're going to see it. If CM Punk, pick that up. I'm like, oh, that's the kid I trained. You don't know who's going to. You don't know if anybody from New Japan's going to see it. All Japan's going to see it. You never know. Especially we live in such a small world now. You literally can upload the match, right? Not even upload. You can live stream it right to Facebook. So by the time your match is done, you may have only had 20 people in the crowd there, but there might have been 2,000.
100,000. Yep. It can go viral in a heartbeat. You have your own, literally with your cell phone, you have your own network. You have your own network right there that you literally can determine everything. And like you said before, at the end of the night, no matter what the audience was there, people could be watching it at any point in time in any part of the world, literally. And they can be watching you, promoters, and then all of a sudden it gets tagged or it gets shared, or somebody tweets about something like that. All of a sudden it goes viral. They tag a few other people. It gets likes. And it's so crazy that we live in this digital world right now, where literally it's the best time to be in wrestling, because like you said before, every single match can be seen by anyone at any time. As long as there's a signal, they can be watching pro wrestling from literally any promotion.
Yeah, it's so fun. Again, my favorite era of wrestling is All Japan from the 90s. And I remember just you'd hear about this awesome match that like Masao or Kawada or Kobashi had, and you're like tape trading with people, and you're waiting from Japan, you're waiting 4, 5, 6 weeks for. And now it's just like, I remember watching the Omega Okada 2 match. Literally, I had a show that Saturday night that happened, would be Sunday morning. And I remember just I stayed at my parents' house because the show was parents' living. I remember watching Omega Okada 2 on my phone in my old bedroom in Old Forge, Pennsylvania, thinking, man, we came a long way from when I was bootlegging tapes from people in Japan so I could watch Misawa and Kobashi. Like, it's just, I remember, when I first broke in, my first 5, 6 years, sending tapes and resumes out. Now it's like, I get asked all the time for people to critique, hey, can you critique my match? And I'm like, yeah, send me a DVD or whatever. Like, oh, I just have this link right here. Just click on it. It's right. I'm like, oh, okay, no problem. Like, it's just crazy. If you want to send stuff out, it's all right there. And it makes things so much easier.
You had talked about your influence as far as your style and your repertoire being more along the lines of a strong style. And obviously there is a lot of that in Japanese wrestling. What was the precursor to that? Meaning, who kind of introduced you to that type of style? Was it your first trainer, or was it just something where you started training and you were like, you know what, I really like it if we take it to the next level, and that just kind of evolved into I'm working strong style? Or was that something that was specifically indoctrinated into you when you were training?
Yeah, no, sure. I think the first 2 wrestlers that I saw that did the Japanese style would be Muda and Liger, just because WCW, NWA, you had you had that. But really, the guy that really bridged it for me would be Hayabusa, just because I would go. ECW is very big, over here in the Northeast in Pennsylvania. So I would go to a lot of ECW shows, and they would sell the bootleg Japanese wrestling tapes. And you would hear about FMW. There was basically like ECW over in Japan, and Hayabusa was the guy. And I remember like a lot of people were telling me, oh, Hayabusa is just Sabu in a mask. I'm like, no, the scars are a little different. But then you get like these best of Japan from the 90s tapes. I'm like, okay, I seen that Liger guy. I seen the Muda guy. I've seen the Chono guy. I'm like, okay, there's Hayabusa. And then you go to the All Japan, you these tapes that are 4, 5, 6 hours, and you get to the All Japan stuff, and it's just like, who's this Masawa guy and Kobashi guy and Kawada and Taue and the Holy Demon Army? I'm like, okay, I know Stan Hansen. I'm like, oh, there's Vader. Wow, matches are way better over in Japan than they are over in the States. It just blew my mind because it's literally there's no holes in it. It's just like that's what I like to wrestle is I don't want anybody to see any holes. Like if you go to a magic show, you don't want to know the secrets. If you're going to go see, I'm a big comic book fan. The new Spider-Man movie is coming out. I don't want to see the green screen. Give me the effects, give me this. Let me, indulge myself in that world for 2 or 3 hours. I don't want to see any holes. And that's when I do my wrestling, or even when I, teach wrestling from time to time. I always tell people, don't put any holes in. Don't let them see the magic tricks. Don't let them heckle you. Don't let them find something, quote unquote, phony about it. Make your stuff look as real as possible. So this way, when they go home, they can say, well, this guy did this, this guy did that, this guy did that. But man, let me tell you, Matt Turner, he put a wrist lock on, or he threw a headlock on, or a forearm or a kick, and he looked like he destroyed that guy. I'm not the most athletic guy in the world. I'm not the most flashy, but I make my stuff look legit.
Speaking of fans, let me ask you this. This is something I always love to ask people. When it comes to fan interactions, obviously over the last nearly 20 years, I'm sure you had a lot. Any interesting stories about fan interactions, positive or negative?
So was that the question you broke about fan interaction?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you've done this for nearly 20 years. Any fan interactions, either positive fan interactions, negative fan interactions, somebody screaming at you, whatever it may be.
No, I love the fans, man. I love the fans. It's keeps me coming back. Any little I get motivated over the littlest thing. I'll get a tweet or DM or something just saying, "Hey, man, I really liked your match," or "Hey, I like your new gear." Just anything like that just gives me so much motivation to keep going. Even like when I'm at the merch table, somebody come over, and I always say, "I'll never charge for autographs. I'll never charge for pictures. Anything that you want, I'll sign. I'll take pictures with you all day, every day. I won't charge a dime. Just the fact that somebody's giving you their time, because you can always make the 20. I lost $20. You can always make the $20 somewhere, job or whatever. You can never get the time back. You can never get the time back. Like this 40 minutes that we're together, we can't get time back. Time is the most valuable thing that we have. You guys have a DeLorean, but or a phone booth from Bill and Ted to go back in time, but we can never get that time back. So when the fans give you their time, or if they take 2 seconds just to say something positive about you, or to come over to take a picture, or they're going to spend 20 minutes to watch your match to give you a comment on it, there's nothing better in the world, man. Nothing better in the world.
It seems. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue, Ritt.
Oh, no. I was going to say, you talked about the DeLorean and the phone booth. Just remember that a little bit later when we got ourselves a little hot tub time machine.
You're going to like this one. I do want to get into your time in Chikara as well, because I'm very fascinated with that. I was interested in Chikara a lot, and obviously now that it's kind of morphed itself. Now we have is Camp Leapfrog. What did you think about Chikara? And I guess maybe I should phrase my question like this. Chikara is unique. It is very unique, and it is a very different type of wrestling. So tell me what your thought was once you were in Chikara, and what were your experiences?
I love Chikara, and I teamed with Anthony Franco there. We did some single stuff, but mostly I teamed with Anthony Franco, who I graduated the Ring of Honor Dojo with. But we stuck out in Chikara because we were wrestlers. And we were right out of the dojo. We wore nothing but black, just like how the New Japan students do, or any old. And that's what Punk wanted. He said, "You guys wear nothing but black until you earn your colors." So we would just go there. We didn't have a gimmick, And in the words of the Von Erichs, hey, we had no gimmick. And back, when everybody else is doing gimmicks, that's a heck of a gimmick. I mean, back in the '80s, gimmicks were popular. The Von Erichs were the Von Erichs, and for the Ring of Honor students, where you had, this guy dressing up as a pirate, this guy dressing up as a construction worker, this guy doing this gimmick, one guy's a bear, which is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, the wrestling's great because it's all variety. So it's like, what makes you stand out? Hey, I'm a wrestler. Okay. One of my favorite wrestlers of all time is Katsuyori Shibata. What's his thing? He's the wrestler. He comes out, black knee pads, black trunks, black kick pads. He goes out there, he kicks your ass, you kick his ass. That's wrestling, man. That's what's wrestling. But I love Chikara because you had great teachers there. Hero, Quack. That's where I first met Larry Sweeney. Boy, you want to talk about somebody completely ahead of his time. Completely ahead of his time. He was still here today. He'd be a millionaire 2 or 3 times over. I mean, he was just so far ahead of his time, and just such a great guy, such a great guy. But Chikara, Jigsaw, Hollow Wicked, all those guys, Shane Storm, Vin Gerard, all those guys were just great to be around, great to work. Eddie Kingston, obviously, look what he's morphed into. He was always an absolute riot in the locker room. What you see is what you get with him, and that's why he's as over as much as he is, because he hasn't changed a bit. I mean, the only thing he's changed is he's constantly getting better in the ring, but just a fun locker room to be around.
We've kind of gone past this a little bit, so I want to take a step backwards. We're kind of right now, if you're joining us, we're going into this deep dive here because I'm so excited to go over all these different things that Matt, you've done, because you worked, like I said, Ring of Honor. We talked about Chikara. We actually have a little time where we spent some time in CZW, and you work with Chris Hero again. CZW, it's a little different. Once again, and I think the theme of all of this is every promotion seems to offer something a little different. And you've worked with Chris before. You're in CZW now. What was your thoughts with CZW, and what was it like at that time?
That was one of the very few matches that I did that I was a full-blown heel. And the reason why is we were doing the Ring of Honor CZW feud, which was, we could do a 2-hour podcast just on that. I mean, that was absolutely insane. That was genius booking by everybody involved, especially Gabe. But what they wanted to do was, I think Derek Sabata was booking at the time, is he wanted to have us come in through the front door with tickets. It was me, Shane Hagedorn, and Pelly Primo. And Chris Hero was going to come out. I think it was the second or third segment. He was going to call us out. They said they want us to come in, heckle the fans, heckle everything in the ring. Hero was going to come out, call us out. And we were all in street clothes, and we were going to have a 3-on-1 match. And Hero basically eliminated Hagedorn, eliminated Pelly, and then eliminated me. Now at that time, I was doing some training in Chikara as well. Obviously, I graduated from Ring of Honor, but from time to time, I would go to Chikara to work out because you had Hero there, you had Quack, you had Claudio, you had Jorge Rivera Skida, who would do seminars there, who was the head trainer of the Torimon Dojo, Ultimo Dragons gym. I think actually had a big hand in training Okada. But anywho, so Hero had a lot of respect for me, as I did him for obvious reasons. But I remember we were putting together that match, and at the time, Hero was very big on doing the cravat. And he had this spot where he's going to keep bumping us. Now, we're in the ECW arena where CZW was running every month, once a month for 4 or 5 years. So we were doing the spot where he's bumping us, and then he was going to fire out when he's turning around. I was going to put him in the cravat. And I'm like, wow, he's going to give me that? He's like, yeah. He's like, no, it's fine. It's going to be fine. So I just remember, kind of, just because it's a bloodthirsty crowd, CZW, it's ultra-violent, wrestling, which isn't my forte at all. I have nothing against it, just not my forte at all. So I don't know what the fans are going to do. So the big feud was, it was obviously CZW versus Ring of Honor, and the 3 Ring of Honor guys holding the banner was Samoa Joe, BJ Whitmer, and Adam Pearce. So Hero wanted to eliminate each one with their finishers. So I think he eliminated Pelly with the pile driver, which is Pearce's finisher. He eliminated Hagedorn with the pile driver, which is Pearce's finisher. Pelly with the exploder, which is Whitmer's finisher, and then he was going to eliminate me with the muscle buster into the choke, which is Joe's finisher. So I mean, we have the crowd rocking. We went 9-10 minutes, whatever. And he's given me a lot. I mean, I have nothing but great things to say about Hero. I mean, one of the people I've learned the most from, and just an absolute, gem in this business. And I remember he gave me the muscle buster, and he put me in the choke, and he said, "Don't tap until I tell you." That's another thing I learned, is you have to wait till you hear the crowd at the right time. He's like, "Okay, the time is right, tap." So tapped him out, or he tapped me out, and then what they did is they had the security would take you and literally throw you out the front door. But I remember, now I'm supposed to be choked out, so I'm selling it like I'm out. And he grabs, the security grabs me, and they go to throw me at the front door where the fans grab me. And I'm almost like body surfing. I'm thinking, I'm going to get stabbed. And thank God I didn't. They threw me out the front door. We went in the back, made sure everybody was okay, and then we got the heck out of there. But, I mean, it was awesome, because you're working with, in my opinion, the best wrestler, in CZW history, because he's a wrestler, Chris Hero. And yes. Again, just awesome. And that's something I use today. I actually use the choke as one of my finishers. I use the Fujiwara armbar. I use a lot of different submissions, double wrist lock. Those are my 3 go-tos. And the person when we're putting the match together, like, when do I tap? Like, I'll tell you. You don't tap until I tell you, because of what I learned from Hero when he put me in the choke. He said, don't tap until I tell you, until you hear that crowd hit right to the right point. And then that's when, that's when you tap. And then that's when, the crowd explodes.
It's so crazy how just you get these educational moments and that will be forever etched in your brain. You know what I mean? Like, that's a moment that you just will forever remember how cool somebody was, how much of a professional they were, and how much you learned from that moment.
Yeah, I mean that obviously the Hero one I just said, the Shelley one before, so many with Punk, so many with Danielson, Kenta. Like, yeah, obviously there was a language barrier, but I remember at the end of the Kenta seminar, like, nobody had any questions, and I was like, hey, can you teach me how to kick? And we were in the ring for 15 minutes, and Kenta and the American Dragon are teaching me how to kick. So those are two pretty good guys to learn kicks from. So again, and those are just things that you just never forget. So, sometimes I don't forget, what I had for dinner. There's times I have to put my wife's birthday in my phone so I don't forget it. I'm just kidding. But there's these things in wrestling that happened, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 15 years ago, that I remember it like it was yesterday.
Wow.
And that's just part of the passion that comes in.
Matt,
Go ahead.
Matt, you say about all these guys in Ring of Honor. Did you have any encounters with Nigel McGuinness at all that you care to share?
Oh, yeah. Nigel was great. Nigel taught me. He was doing his finisher. He was doing the lariat. And if you remember, when he was getting towards the main event, he would hit like 2 or 3 of them to put the guy away. And I remember I was asking him, I said, why not one? Why are you hitting a couple? And he said, well, and again, my wrestling, I don't make it look fake. So what's the realest thing that's out there to pro wrestling? UFC, right? I'm a huge UFC MMA fan. Pride, Pancrase, the whole 9, right? So you're watching a fight and a guy gets rocked with an overhand right, and he's wobbly legs. What are the chances he's going to hit the overhand right again? He's going to, because it worked. Or same thing in football. Hey, the play action pass worked 3 plays ago. Let's try it again. So Nigel taught me that, hey, there's nothing wrong with hitting a move 2 or 3 times in a row, or hitting it, hitting that move, hit another move, and then another move. And then I would go back and watch All Japan from the 90s, the King's Road style. I'm like, that's what a lot of it was, just solid throwing forearm after forearm after forearm, roaring forearm, kick out, forearm, another forearm finish. And Kabashi, lariat, Kawada, brain buster. So it's like, you go back, I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. If you're in a fight and you hit a guy, with a left, to the ribs, and he's just about ready to go down, he kind of gets back up and he's struggling. Man, if you hit him with it again, he's probably going to put him away. And that's one of the things that that Nigel taught me. Again, and I was in the IW Mid-South. I was in the locker room with him. Just another super, super awesome dude that, again, another learning experience. And again, I'm so lucky to be picking the brains of a Nigel McGuinness, a CM Punk, a Samoa Joe, a Alex Shelley, Kenta, American Dragon, all these little things that I've been lucky to pick up over the last 19 years and counting.
Well, one of my biggest matches I remember of Nigel was him and Bryan Danielson, going head to head. That was just some of the most hard hitting, those elbows repeatedly. I'm like, man, how does someone take that and
Yeah, those matches were absolutely timeless, and it's sometimes it's a shame that people don't remember Nigel McGuinness, because he was one of the best. You put his stuff at Ring of Honor up against any era, Flair 89, Steamboat 87, Okada 2016, Misawa 94, and it's right up there. It really is. It's right up there. And Nigel McGuinness, his stuff, and he was really just ahead of his time. And I know hopefully it's somebody that the fans can go back and watch. Again, you can go on YouTube, you can go on I think most of his stuff's up on on Honor Club, and watch his stuff with not only the American Dragon Bryan Danielson, but his stuff with Samoa Joe, his stuff with Roderick Strong, Austin Aries, Kenta, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nigel's phenomenal performer, phenomenal teacher, just a phenomenal Cool
We've talked about, obviously you getting into wrestling and all these different experiences you've had with these different promotions. And obviously, CM Punk being a big role in your career. Let's kind of focus on him for a second. What was it like getting to meet him as an individual first, and then obviously getting to sit under the learning tree and learn under him? And what were some of the things that he passed on to you as far as the tutelage?
Learning under Punk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, first, I mean, just first of all, just a great guy. I remember because it was Philly, so I was 2 hours away, and I was finishing college, and I couldn't make every training seminar because he was doing, I think, maybe 3 or 4 a week, and I was able to make maybe two, something like that. And I told him, I said, look, I want to do this, I want to be here, but I have to finish college. If I have to do school again, the Ring of Honor school, if I got to go through another class. And he said, well, we'll see how far you progress. But he was always great. Always got his book on a full sold out Ricky the Dragon Steamboat weekend clinic. I remember I was like, yeah, I saw that. I heard it sold out. And he's like, no, it's not sold out. I made one phone call, and he's like, no, you guys are in. I always took the time to teach us. And a lot of it with him is just make the little things make sense. Make the little things make sense. Obviously, the main thing with him was when we first started was cardio conditioning. I mean, I think we probably did 4 or 5 months. I could be wrong, before we even touched the ring. It was, you'd get there, you'd stretch, you run 4 or 5 miles. You would do about 1,000 squats. So I think you would do like 10 sets of like 100. You would run all these drills in a warehouse. You do push-ups, sit-ups, and you go home. You wouldn't even touch the ring. And I remember the first time we touched the ring was when Samoa Joe was there. And we would do all these drills. We get in the ring for the first time. He'd make us run the ropes. And then he would be like, okay, now you're going to sprawl with Samoa. Like, yeah, after we're already exhausted, we're gonna go and kind of almost like chain wrestle and sprawl wrestle with the biggest, baddest dude out there. Yeah. Like, thanks. But you learn cardio, man. Punk would not want his wrestlers out of shape, because you're going out there and hey, who you trained by? CM Punk. You better be good, man. You better be good, and you better have cardio. You better be professional. You better, keep your mouth shut and your eyes and ears open. So learning under him was absolutely phenomenal. Just an absolute great guy. And I know over the last 7 years, people have a couple of negative things to say about him. I guess that's the way the world is. But for every one negative story that's out there, I got about 10 super awesome stories about him, because chances are the fans out there that have a negative story about him didn't spend the time with him that I did. So.
No, I would agree with you completely. It almost sounds like the old stories we would hear about Ole Anderson and the way he would run his training camps. And obviously up in Minnesota and Vern Gagne and whatnot, it was literally,
Yeah.
yes, calisthenics, cardio, running around, and literally wheelbarrows and all this other kind of stuff before you ever even saw a ring. And then obviously they would throw you in the ring when you're completely blown up, stretch you out, and kind of find out the weeding process of who really wanted to be there. During your time.
I wish the way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just gonna say I wish it was like that now, because I go to some of these indie shows, man. It's just like I don't say anything because I'm not a negative person. I know there's people out there that they're this is their dream, but I look at some people, I'm like, man, they wouldn't have lasted an hour at the Ring of Honor dojo. I wish. Punk was old school. His thing was he was really good friends with Rocky Romero, who was training at the New Japan dojo, and I'm sure he was getting tips from him. But his thing was, I want you guys to be trained Japanese dojo style. And we were. Man, we paid our dues, all right.
And it's so interesting. We're seeing Rocky Romero now in AEW, obviously out there as well with Best Friends and Chris Statlander and Orange Cassidy. And it's so neat to be able to see some of this crossover here, that the Forbidden Door they're often referring to now is being open to people being able to come in and different promotions to be able to have talent going back and forth. Let me kind of segue into this, because it's something that really important that you mentioned before about people not being able to last going through the Ring of Honor dojo. What do you think is the biggest thing that's lacking now with some of the people? And we're not saying everybody, but a lot of the people who graduate from some of these wrestling camps. What would you say if you had to put your finger on one thing? Man, they really are not hitting on this the way they should.
They got to train old school. They got to train old school and have more respect for the business. There's so many wrestling schools that are opened up where it's like the person that's training doesn't even really know how to wrestle themselves. It's just like, you need to be trained by somebody that knows what they're doing or has the credentials. That's like, hey, I have, XYZ of so many people, that's out there. Because now it's just like, hey, let me just take your $3,500 or $4,000. I don't care that, what you guys do or how shape you're in. But there was a show that I was on with my tag partner, Andy Header, maybe about a year and a half ago. And HG Low came up to us and he goes, I can already, now